Well, hi there, and welcome back to The Other Sentence. I'm Lisa Mustard, and I'm so glad that you're here. This podcast is for spouses and loved ones of people who have been accused, indicted, convicted, or sentenced for white-collar crimes. And if you're listening because this is happening in your family, I want to say this from the beginning. I know this may feel impossible to talk about, especially when children are involved, because it's one thing to try to process what's happening as an adult. It's another thing entirely to look at your child and wonder, what do I say? How much do they need to know? How much do I protect them from? What if they hear it from someone else? What if they Google it? What if someone at school says something? What if they ask me directly, is Dad going to jail? What if they ask, did he do it? And what if they ask, are we going to lose our home? What about if they ask, are we going to be okay? And those aren't easy questions. And if you're trying to answer them while you're also scared, angry, embarrassed, confused, and overwhelmed, it can feel like way too much. So today, I'm going to talk about one of the hardest parts of a white-collar legal crisis: how to talk to your children when the adult world has become complicated, frightening, and uncertain. Before we go any further, I want to offer a brief reminder. This podcast is for educational and supportive purposes only. It's not therapy, legal advice, or a substitute for working with your own attorney, therapist, or professional support team. And especially when there is an active legal case, you may need to speak with your attorney about what can and cannot be shared publicly or with others. My role here is not to tell you what legal details to discuss. My role is to help you think about the emotional side of the conversation, how to stay grounded, how to support your children, and how to communicate in a way that is honest, age-appropriate, and stabilizing. One of the first things I want to say is this: children usually know when something is wrong. They may not know the facts, they may not know the charges, they may not understand the legal language. They may not know what an indictment is, or what sentencing means, or what restitution means, or what federal prison means. But they feel the shift. They notice the phone calls, they notice the whispering, they notice when one parent is crying in the bathroom. They notice when the mood in the house changes. They notice when adults stop talking when they walk into the room. They notice when people leave the room as soon as they appear. They notice when the adults around them seem tense, distracted, angry, afraid, or unusually quiet. And if the situation is public, they may notice other things too. They may notice that people are treating them differently. They may hear something at school. They may see something online. They may overhear another parent talking. They may sense that there is a story happening around them, but no one is helping them understand it. And I know this not only professionally, but personally. As a child, I knew something was happening in my family before anyone ever sat me down and explained it. No one had to say the words clearly for me to feel that something had changed. I saw the emotional outbursts. I heard the quiet conversations. I noticed the whispers. I noticed people leaving the room when I walked in, and I felt the shift in the house. And then, as more information started to come out, I saw and heard family members talking about what was happening. I heard pieces of conversations. I saw reactions. I picked up on the fear, the anger, the tension, and the confusion. But I was never told directly what was going on. And that can be incredibly confusing for a child, because children may not know the facts, but they know when the adults around them are carrying something serious. I want to say something, though, before I go any further. It's not that I was never told what was going on. I was never told directly from my father what was happening. I never heard the words directly from him. My mother, I heard so much from her, maybe too much at times. But my father, he's the one that I'm referring to. So I just need to clarify that because I know I have family that are listening to this. Okay, so back to what I was saying. Children may not understand the legal details. They may not know what questions to ask. They may not even know if they are allowed to ask questions. But they feel the shift. They feel the secrecy. They feel the silence. They feel the emotional temperature of the home changing. And when no one helps them make sense of it, they are left to create their own explanation. I know I did. And sometimes what children imagine is even scarier than the truth. That doesn't mean children need to know everything. They don't. But silence is not always protection. Sometimes silence creates more fear. Sometimes silence makes children feel alone with their own questions. And sometimes silence teaches children that the subject is so shameful, so dangerous, or so frightening that it cannot even be named. And that is a heavy thing for a child to carry. And that is one of the reasons this conversation matters so much to me. Because children do not need every detail, but they do need emotional honesty. They need someone to help them understand that what they are sensing is real, that it is not their fault, and that they are not alone inside the uncertainty. So here's the first principle I want you to hold on to. Tell the truth, but not the whole truth. Children deserve honesty, but they don't need adult-level details. They don't need every legal fact. They don't need every financial fear. They don't need to know everything you know. They don't need to be pulled into adult conversations about attorneys, plea agreements, sentencing guidelines, court strategy, finances, marital decisions, or family conflict. But they do need enough truth to help them feel oriented. They need enough truth to understand that something serious is happening. They need enough truth to know that they are not imagining the tension. They need enough truth to know they can come to you with questions. And they need enough reassurance to know that the adults are still the adults, because that part really matters. In a crisis, children can quickly begin to feel like they need to take care of the parent who is falling apart. They may become quiet. They may become overly helpful. They may stop asking for things. They may try to protect you from their own feelings. They may act like they are fine because they cannot tell you that they're not. And while that may look like maturity on the outside, it can be a sign that they are carrying way too much. Your child can know that you're sad, and your child can know that it's hard. Your child can know that the family is going through something serious, but your child should not feel responsible for stabilizing you. That is not their job. So what do you actually say? Let's talk about it. Of course, every child is different. Their age matters, their temperament matters, their relationship with the accused parent matters, how public the situation is matters, what they already know matters. But I want to give you some simple examples of language that can help. For a younger child, you might say, "Dad is dealing with a serious grown-up problem. There are people helping us figure out what happens next. You are safe and you can ask me questions." Or, "Our family is going through something hard right now. You didn't cause it and it's not your job to fix it. I love you and I'm going to keep taking care of you." Notice that this language does not give too much detail, but it also doesn't pretend that nothing is happening. For an older child or teenager, you might say, "There's a legal situation involving Dad's work, and it may be something people talk about. But I'm not going to share every detail, but I won't lie to you. You can ask me questions, and I'll answer what I can." Or, "This is serious, and there are still things we don't know. I know that may feel scary, and the adults are working with the right people, and you don't have to manage this." For an adult child, the conversation may be different. You might say, "I know this affects you too, and I may not have all the answers, and I may not be able to discuss every detail, but I do want us to be able to talk honestly about how this is impacting the family." Or, "You're allowed to have your own feelings about this. You don't have to protect me from them, and you don't have to pretend this is easy." The exact words matter less than the posture behind them. Calm, clear, honest, age-appropriate, and steady enough. Not perfect, steady enough. Because children don't need a perfect parent in a crisis. They need a steady enough parent. Now, I want to talk about what not to say. And I want to be gentle here because if you have said some of these things, it doesn't mean you failed. It means you're overwhelmed. It means you were trying to protect your child. It means you were trying to survive a situation you never expected to be in. But there are some phrases that can accidentally make things harder for children. One of them is, "Everything is fine." Because everything is clearly not fine, and the child may stop trusting their own perception. They may think, "I feel scared, but mom says everything is fine, so maybe I'm wrong." Instead, you can say this, "This is hard, but we are handling it one step at a time." Another phrase to be careful with is, "You don't need to worry." And I understand why parents say this. You want to comfort them, but children do worry. And if you tell them not to worry, they may simply hide the worry from you. Instead, you can say, "It makes sense that you have questions, and you can talk to me about what you're feeling." Another phrase to be careful with is, "Don't tell anyone." Now, I understand that privacy may matter deeply, and there may be legal concerns, there may be reputational concerns, there may be safety concerns, there may be very good reasons to be careful about what is shared. But when a child hears "don't tell anyone," they may experience it as shame. They may feel like they are now responsible for keeping the family secret. Instead, you might say, "This is a private family matter and we are going to be careful about who we talk to. If you feel like you need to talk to someone, come to me and we'll decide together who is safe." That gives them guidance without making them feel like they are carrying a dangerous secret alone. Another phrase to be careful with is, "You have to be strong for me." Children should not have to be strong for the adults. They can be brave, they can be resilient, they can be included in age-appropriate ways, but they should not become the emotional support system for the parent. Instead, you can say, "You don't have to take care of me. I have adults helping me, and your job is to be a kid." And depending on their age, you might even say, "Your job is to go to school, see your friends, do your activities, ask questions, and let me know when you're having a hard time." And that can be very reassuring. Now, I want to also talk about something very specific to this kind of crisis, and that is public attention. White-collar crime can bring a unique kind of exposure. Sometimes it's in the news. Sometimes it moves through a community quietly but quickly. Sometimes other parents know. Sometimes classmates know. And sometimes the children hear bits and pieces before you're ready. And one of the most painful things for a child is feeling unprepared. They may not know what to say if someone asks, "Is your dad going to jail? Did your mom know? Are you moving? Is your family broke? I saw your dad online. Why is everyone talking about your family?" These moments can feel humiliating and frightening. So one of the most helpful things you can do is give your child simple language, not a speech, not a legal explanation, just a sentence they can hold on to. For example, "That's a private family matter." Or, "I don't want to talk about that at school." Or, "My family is dealing with something difficult, but I'm not going to discuss it." Or, "You should ask an adult about that, not me." For a younger child, it may be even simpler. "I don't want to talk about that," and then they can walk away. You can also give them permission to come home and tell you what happened. You might say, "If anyone asks you something uncomfortable, you don't have to answer. You can tell them it's private, and then I want you to tell me so you don't have to hold it alone." That last part matters. So you don't have to hold it alone. Because many children in these situations do hold it alone. They may feel embarrassed. They may feel loyal to the accused parent. They may feel angry. They may feel protective. They may feel ashamed, even though they did nothing wrong. And that is one of the messages children need to hear clearly. You did not do anything wrong. You are not responsible for this. You are not guilty because someone in your family is in trouble. You are still you. Those words may need to be repeated many times, not once, many times. So let's talk a little bit about feelings, because your child may have feelings that are complicated. They may love the parent who was accused or convicted. They may also feel angry at the parent. They may miss them. They may feel embarrassed by them. They may defend them in public and cry about them in private. They may want to visit. They may not want to visit. They may ask questions one day and refuse to talk the next. They may seem completely fine and then fall apart over something small, and this is all normal. Crisis does not move through children in a straight line, and it may not look the way you expect. One child may become anxious and clingy, another may become angry, another may become quiet, another may become overly responsible, another may act like nothing is happening, another may make jokes because they don't know what else to do. And the goal is not to force a certain emotional response. The goal is to make room for the truth that their feelings may change. You might say, "You're allowed to love dad and be angry at him. You're allowed to miss him and not want to talk about him. You're allowed to feel embarrassed. You're allowed to have questions. You're allowed to know not how you feel yet." And that kind of permission can be very powerful because children often feel pressure to choose a side emotionally. Do I love him or am I mad? Do I defend him or do I tell the truth? Do I feel sorry for him or do I feel hurt by him? Do I protect mom or do I ask about dad? But families are complicated. Love and anger can exist together. Disappointment and longing can exist together. And children need adults who can tolerate that complexity. This is where I want to speak to you, the parent or spouse listening. I know you may be trying to do this while you're also barely functioning, and you may be sleeping terribly. You may be eating whatever you can. You may be fielding calls from attorneys, family members, school, friends, and people who suddenly want information. You may be trying to hold your home together while your own nervous system is in survival mode. And now I'm talking to you about being steady for your children, and that may feel like one more impossible responsibility. So I want to be clear. Steady does not mean emotionless. Steady does not mean you never cry. It doesn't mean you have all the answers. And steady doesn't mean you know what the future holds. And steady means your child can feel that you are still the adult. It means you repair when you lose your temper. It means you come back after a hard conversation. It means you say, I'm sorry, I was overwhelmed. It means you say, I don't know yet, but I will tell you what I can when I can. It means you get your own support so your child does not have to become your support. And that may be a therapist, a coach, one trusted friend, a support group, a faith leader. That may be another adult who can sit with you in the truth of what is happening without needing you to perform. You need somewhere for your fear to go. You need somewhere for your anger to go. And you need somewhere for your grief to go. Because if there's no adult space for those feelings, they can spill into the parent-child relationship in ways you never intended. And I say that with compassion, not judgment, because this is hard. You weren't handed a manual for this, and most people are not prepared for the day they have to explain a federal investigation, an arrest, indictment, a conviction, or a prison sentence to a child. So please hear me. You do not have to do this perfectly, but you do need support. Now, I also know this from the child's side. As I've shared before, I've lived through this as the child of someone who committed a white-collar crime. And I know what it feels like when the family's private pain becomes connected to public events, legal words, community judgment, and questions that are too big for a child to fully understand. And I know what it feels like to sense that something is happening before anyone names it. I know what it feels like to hear pieces of the story, to see family members talking, to feel the tension in the room and still not be told directly what is going on. And that kind of uncertainty can leave a child feeling confused, alone, and unsure whether it is even okay to ask questions. Children may not need every detail, but they do need emotional honesty. They need someone to help them make sense of what has changed. They need reassurance that they are not responsible. They need permission to have feelings that may not be neat or convenient. And they need adults who understand that the crime may belong to one person, but the impact reaches the family. That does not mean the child's life is ruined. It does not mean the family cannot heal. It does not mean there's no future. But it does mean that the child's experience deserves care, not panic, not secrecy, not overexposure, but care. So let me bring this into something practical. If you're facing this conversation with your child, I want you to think in 3 sentences. Not a perfect speech, not a courtroom explanation, not a long emotional confession, just 3 sentences. The first one, name the situation simply. The second, reassure them of what is still true. Third, invite questions. For example, our family is going through something serious right now. You are safe, you are loved, and the adults are handling the adult problems. You can ask me questions and I will answer what I can. And that may be enough for the first conversation. And depending on the age of your child, you can adjust the language. For a younger child, Dad has a serious grown-up problem. You did not cause it and you are safe. And you can always come to me if you feel worried. For a teenager, there's a legal situation involving Dad and some people may hear about it. I know this may feel embarrassing, confusing, or scary, and you are allowed to feel however you feel. You can ask me questions and I will be honest about what I can share. For the adult child, this situation is serious and I know it affects you too. I may not have all the answers, but I don't want us to pretend this isn't painful. You can talk to me and I also want you to have the support that is separate from me if you need it. Again, the goal is not to say everything. The goal is to open the door. Because when the door is open, children are less likely to feel alone with their fear. So here's your practical step for this week. Write down the 3 sentences you want your child to hear from you. Not the legal explanation, not the whole family history, not every fear you have, just 3 grounding sentences. Something like, our family is going through something difficult. You are safe and loved. You can ask me questions and I will answer what I can. So write them down, practice saying them out loud. Notice where your voice catches. Notice where you want to over-explain. Notice where you want to avoid. This is all useful information because the more grounded you can be before the conversation, the more emotionally safe the conversation will feel for your child. And if you have more than one child, remember this. You may need different conversations. The 6-year-old, the 13-year-old, and the 22-year-old do not need the same level of information. They may not ask the same questions. They may not react the same way. That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you are parenting different children through the same storm. Before we close, I want to say this clearly. Your children do not need you to erase the crisis. They don't need you to make everything okay today. They don't need you to have every answer. They need you to be honest enough that they can trust you. They need you to be calm enough that they can lean on you. And they need you to protect them from adult burdens without shutting them out of reality. They need to know that their feelings are allowed. They need to know that they didn't cause this. They need to know they are not responsible for fixing it. And they need to know that even when the family is going through something painful, they are still loved, seen, and protected. And that's not easy, but it is possible to walk through this with care. One conversation at a time, one question at a time, one repair at a time, and one steady moment at a time. If your family is in the early days of a white-collar legal crisis and you're trying to figure out what to say, what to do, and how to steady yourself, I've created a free guide called When the News Breaks, a private guide for families facing a white-collar legal crisis, and you can find the link in the show notes. And if you are the spouse or loved one of someone facing a white-collar legal crisis and you need private support, I invite you to book a consultation call with me. My coaching support is designed to help you stabilize, think clearly, protect your well-being, and begin rebuilding your life with discretion, compassion, and clarity. You don't have to carry this alone, and your children don't need for you to be perfect. They need you to be supported enough to keep showing up. Thank you for listening to The Other Sentence, and I'll see you in the next episode.